Good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to call to order the first regular meeting of the Committee of the Whole of the new City Council of Nanaimo under the able assistance and guidance of Ms. Sheila Gurry, our clerk. I'd like to welcome everyone to this meeting, and I'd like to recognize firstly that we are on the traditional territory of the Nanaimo First Nation. The question period sign-up sheet is on the partition wall near the gallery. If during the meeting any member of the gallery has a question regarding an agenda item, please write down your name and the agenda item on the sheet. At the start of question period, the chair will call those who've signed up to the podium to address council. We have as the first item on the agenda the introduction of late items. I gather we are going to be removing agenda item 6E, delegation number 2, Omni 5 holdings regarding DVP 343 110 Fry and 1114 Fry Street, 114 Fry Street.
Your Worship, just to interrupt, and it's not about you stealing my line there. Normally I introduce the late items, but it's after you've introduced the late items and before you get a motion to adopt the agenda as amended, it would be the time would be appropriate before doing that motion would be to ask your fellow councillor members if they have any additional items as well that they would like to add.
Well, do any of the additional council members have any items? No? That's very good. Thank you. No surprises.
I did.
He's got to look at his screen.
Go ahead, Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to make a motion to amend so that delegation C is moved to 10 minutes.
And that would be from Mr. Beaton, the Executive Director of the Nanaimo Aboriginal Centre, and Joy Brimner, correct?
Correct.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Bonner?
And Your Worship, just before the vote takes place, our new procedural bylaw says that it needs to be a unanimous vote of all members present, just so council's aware.
Thank you, Ms. Gurry. All those in favor? Contrary? Unanimous. Thank you. I now call for the motion for the adoption of the agenda, unless there's anyone else who wishes to add anything.
So moved.
Seconded? Councillor Bonner. All those in favor? Contrary? Motion carried. Thank you very much. I'd like a motion for the adoption of minutes. Previous minutes?
Or none.
There are no minutes.
Yes, we do have minutes. Ms. Gurry, is it inappropriate for us to attempt to adopt minutes?
We haven't had a town meeting yet.
Sorry, Your Worship, just one moment. I'm just looking to see under your agenda if you do in fact have minutes, and I'm not seeing any. And according to Ms. Snellgrove, there are no
Thank you.
minutes on this agenda.
Okay.
Our apologies.
And we have no presentations on the agenda. And it's now the time for delegations. I would remind all the delegations, we're happy to have you here today, and there's a 5-minute opening for anyone who wishes to make their presentation in accordance with the agenda. And I'd call on Holden Southward firstly, the first delegate. Welcome, Mr. Southward.
Thank you. Nice to see you here.
You can use the timer. Yes.
It's a pleasure being here with you guys. So address is 848 Ina's Place, live in Nanaimo, and my delegation is about my vision for becoming the municipality, becoming more self-reliant, self-owned, and self-determined. And just take to note that sometimes visions take years or hundreds of years to take place, so don't be scared. I have to speak it the way it is. So I'll start off with the letter to the editor that was published on July 26th this year, and I start off right away. This is my letter to the editor. Okay. In regards to the growing tent city downtown, I believe this is mostly a manifestation caused by the treacherous practice of allowing foreigners to gobble up all our real estate for all these years. Rents are skyrocketing and the prices of real estate is off the charts. The hoarders of real estate must feel very proud of themselves in being masters of the universe, while the other next generations face a dystopian future of debt, stress, and struggle. In the end, the taxpayer ends up with paying the cost for more very expensive government housing, not just for the homeless, but for low-income earners, the elderly, and the disabled. Before this massive real estate bubble, there was plenty of rooming houses, apartments, and cheap little fixer-uppers, and people felt there was a future for them. I believe we need to immediately ban all foreign purchase of our land and as well send letters to all the foreign owners demanding they put their houses on the market as soon as possible. If they do not I believe we should work to repatriate all foreign-owned land as soon as possible. Foreign means somebody who doesn't reside in Canada, wasn't born here, wasn't immigrated here, so there's nothing, it's like, don't take it, it's something racial, like people like to jump out and attack you without proof. Okay, I believe we must think about the future generations first, even if it means a sacrifice for the present. We must decide soon whether we are to be a viable, self-reliant, and self-owned country or just a corporate colony where ordinary citizens are used as dependent cattle to make the rich richer. Are we a country or not? To be or not to be is the question, and I'll go on here to what I've written down besides the letter to the editor. The earth is finite, and the age of real estate greed must stop. Strict rules must be applied, and the financial enablers of real estate greed must be stopped. Those who control the money supply control the world, and if you let them continue to seduce our species into materialism, self-indulgence, and competition, then the more the manifestations of debt dependence, divisions, divorce, disassociation, depression, decadence, dysfunction, and dystopia will follow. Moving forward and becoming more self-reliant, self-owned, and self-determined in our own regions will enable us to reclaim our natural cohesiveness that makes life worth living as a species. Then we can begin to transcend the mere survivalist mode of life and discover our great talents. We all came from the earth and we are spirit too. Self-reliance is a moral responsibility. If you're an immigrant or born in Canada, you have not only the right, but an obligation to claim a small amount of ownership of the country. Without nationalism, democracy and freedom will be lost. We are all earthlings, but we have to have a holistic order and strong borders. Otherwise, we will fall into divisions, disorder, and discontentment, anarchy, martial law, and then dictatorship. We're not doing anyone on earth a favor by giving in to the moment, because the future will be lost. The control grid that the globalist technocrats have created is so rigid and controlling, the freedom of thought that leads to democracy is stifled. When new politicians replace the old, it is not much more than changing window dressing on a house that sits on the bad foundation. Some say democracy has failed, but the truth is democracy never was and is only token. If it becomes the will of the people in our municipality to begin the next paradigm shift and become much more self-reliant, self-determined, and self-owned, then we should respect that. Only through this path will we be able to capture democracy and the freedom to live according to the natural code of our coexistence as we were meant to as a cohesive species. It's a balance between local autonomy and loyalty to the nation. Without nationalism, freedom does not exist. Nationalism is not imperialism, and local autonomy is not anarchy. If the system is not conducive for democracy, then we must change the system starting locally. Democracy must be an ongoing dialogue rather than a monologue, and I propose, well, to the Council to return the length of delegations back to 10 minutes again, like before. We live in a corporate colony pyramid scheme. We kind of live in a country, but it's mostly the big technocrats that the globalists control. They control us anyway. They use the technocrats to kind of, make our society what it is. And on top, very top of this pyramid, are the puppet masters. And these are the ones that have the hidden agenda. They're the globalist plutocracy. Plutocracy means a society that's controlled by the rich. So they're actually an oligarchy, which means they're the few that actually control the scenes behind the curtains. And their members are some of the world bankers and big corporate magnates and rich, and et cetera. Okay. They have a plan to form a one world government where everyone is forced to use their money system in order to surrender self-determination, self-reliance, and regional identity. Their influence behind the scenes is preponderous. Now, this might sound corny. To begin with,
Mr. Southward, I'm indulging you. We're a half minute past the 5-minute limit.
Okay.
I suggest you have your closing line now.
Anyway, the last note was that if we live in a plutocracy, we don't even live in a patriarchy. So that's all I wanted to say. Just there's a.
Thank you very much. Ms. Gurry, you wanted to say something?
My apologies, Your Worship, that was not intentional. Thank you.
When it shows up my screen, Councillor Thorpe tells me I have to pay attention.
No, and you were correct. I did have my request. I apologize.
Any questions for Mr. Southward? Thank you very much. Appreciate your presentation.
Hopefully I didn't scare you guys.
The next delegation is Mr. Hankins, the Mid-Island Business Initiative. Mr. Hankins, nice to see you.
Thank you. Before I start, I'd just like to acknowledge that we are on the traditional territories of the Nanaimo First Nation. Mayor, Council, staff, thank you very much for this opportunity to share with you about the Mid-Island Business Initiative that we affectionately now call MIBI. I'm just going to move forward. I know I only have 5 minutes, so I have to race through these slides. So MIBI was launched in February 2017. We cover the area of Ladysmith up to Qualicum Beach. There's only one staff member, which is myself, and I'm 50% of my time. And really our main focus is raising the awareness of this area with the idea of trying to attract companies and talent to come and set up here. Our members, and you'll see some behind me, you'll see some of the members are actually here in the audience. You'll see we've got a good selection of different sectors represented from education to professional services to construction and development, transportation, etc. So we're very pleased with the type of membership that we have, and we meet once a month to talk about strategy. So what have we been doing since February 2017? First thing we did was we launched a website, designed our logo, and we have a active Facebook and LinkedIn page. We've been doing events in Vancouver, because Vancouver is where we see as one of our main markets to try and attract companies here. We've been working with MNP, TD, and BMO to do these 3 events, where we, invitation only, we have 50 to 60 people come out, and we tell them about how great it is to be in this area. We also flew out 13 consul generals from some of the largest countries like India and China back in May. They were hosted up at the university. We had business presentations, and then we took them up to Milner Gardens as well. We've also been reaching out to both the BC and federal trade officers abroad, so that we make sure that Nanaimo and the region is actually on their focus. So if there's any US companies that are thinking about relocating to BC, and we're already seeing quite a lot of them come into Vancouver, that they're at least considering our region as well. Now, the common theme that comes out every time we have these meetings is that really people say, wow, we had actually no idea what was going on in the Mid-Island. Even though it's just across the strait, the lack of visibility of what's going on here. And I actually would say that some people even in the Mid-Island are actually unaware of some of the great technology companies that we have here. And once they got to learn about us, they actually then say, well, you know what, maybe this could be a potential for us to either expand or set up a satellite office over here as well. So I'm going to return to that shortly. So the other areas of collaboration that we've been doing, not only have we been doing events over in Vancouver, but we've also been working locally here. And I'm going to speed through this slide just because of the fact that I only have 5 minutes. But we've launched a thing called the MTEC, the Manufacturers Technology and Entrepreneurship Council, which is really helping to create that tech community here in our region because it's lacking. We recently attracted a gaming company here. One of the first things they said to us when they turned around, they said, well, where's the community? Where do I go and find other gamers? Where's the meetups? And we didn't have them. They've actually had to create them themselves. So I just want to recognize Mayor Krogh in his capacity as the MLA. He has actually been championing our request to Minister Ralston to get money for funding for this. Working with Dale Lindsay and architects as well as developers, we've been looking at the end-to-end process of the development and building permit process, and that's been going extremely well, and we're hoping in the next month or so to come forward with some ideas as to how we can look at those timelines. And then the other thing is when we start to focus on bringing in companies here, one of the best ways you can do that, actually we're very fortunate we have the Vancouver Island Conference Centre. So how do we bring events here? Either events we already have coming here or events that we'd like to attract to come here that actually support the types of technologies and the sectors that we're trying to bring. So we've been having meetings now for the last 3 months, and they've been going extremely well with VICC, with the city, with the Greater Nanaimo Chamber, and the Tourism Vancouver Island. So I talked about coming back to what we've learned as a result of doing the events over in Vancouver. One of the things we kicked off at the beginning of this year was a marketing awareness campaign going to get money from the private sector to actually fund an initiative to actually really tell more and more people about what's going on here. So we've been doing these events in Vancouver, invitation only, 50 or 60 people. The decisions of who we bring there are people who we believe might actually come and relocate here or people who are great at actually helping to spread the message. But we're only getting 50 or 60 people at a time, so how do we get to more? So we went through a funding campaign. We've basically reached the numbers that we were hoping to get to, so we launched the campaign earlier this month. It's focused on the Vancouver market. It's going to be running for about 6 months. The target market is the business decision makers, and we're going to be doing a launch event in Vancouver in late January. And if you look at all the different logos around there, you'll see some of the logos from the MIBI members as well, but there's also members, other companies that have want to support
this initiative as well. And so we're really, really pleased with just the sheer breadth of companies that are wanting to help and support this initiative. And I'm also, Mayor Krogh has actually agreed to be at the event in late January, which we'll be doing in downtown Vancouver in late January. So I don't know how I'm doing for timing.
You're just perfect, actually,
Okay.
with the red light.
Okay, so this is one of the, in terms of the launch, in the December-January double edition of BC Business, we took this feature out on the Mid-Island businesses taking off. And Eastside Games is a 105-person operation in Vancouver who has recently been set up an operation here. They've been here about 6 months now. They're just in the process of expanding. But if you just indulge me, I will read this out word for word, because this is from Jean-Guy Niquet, who's their head guy here in Nanaimo. We were growing fast in Vancouver and wanted to open another studio, and we did so in Nanaimo in July, not only for the obvious benefits, but also because we wanted to create a gaming community to complement those in Vancouver and Victoria. And it goes on to say, we will expand from 7 to 20 people by next year. This is a significant achievement for us.
And I appreciate it, but in being indulgent with those first delegations, I've had the pleasure to welcome as mayor. When the red light goes on.
Okay, fair enough. So just my last slide then. We have over 40 organizations that have supported us.
I must tell you a story. The late Robert Summers, who was a social credit cabinet minister, convicted and sent to jail for taking a bribe, once told my high school class that a good salesman didn't stick his foot in the door, a good salesman kept his head in the door, that way he could still keep talking. Having said that, I appreciate it, but we have 3 councillors already who wish to ask you questions, so I think we're getting a good impression. Councillors Armstrong first, please.
Thank you, Chair, through yourself to the delegation. Thank you, Mr. Hankins, appreciate the briefing. Do you see a role with the city playing with MBI, or are you content with where you guys are at now?
No, we're very much actually, one of the reasons we're here today is we want to actually come out here and say we're really looking forward to working with the city. We're already working with some of the departments, like we're working with Dale and his team, we're working with Bill Corzan, he comes to the promotional authorities meeting, but we very much would like to engage with you and sit down and talk about what economic development looks like in the future.
Thank you.
Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to the delegation, thank you very much, Mr. Hankins, for your presentation. Great information for us to have. You gave us a lot in your 5 or 6, 7 minutes. But thank you also for the work that you've done historically over the past several years regarding economic development in the Nanaimo and Mid-Island area. We certainly appreciate that. I'm hoping that the regional district will benefit from your presentation as well at some point, and look forward to hearing more about your organization. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to the delegation. I wanted to thank you also for the work that you've done over the last number of years. You've gone above and beyond what we would expect of anybody. I also believe that our high-tech industry, development of our high-tech industry is a future for Nanaimo. My question to you is, where would you like to see us in 4 years from now?
Well, I think if you look at, in order to attract companies, if you look at the best cities in the world or what they've done, they talk about actually having a visionary mayor and council, which I believe we have, creating a vibrant downtown centre, and then having welcoming arms when anybody comes here. So I think we have the ability to leverage off of this great success that Vancouver and Victoria are experiencing. But in terms of what that looks like, I think really we want to work with you. We see tech as being a good opportunity. We see the green industry as a great one as well. But I think it's having that shared common vision that the community can own, and then we can move towards it.
Thank you.
Councillor Gesselbrock.
Thank you, Mr. Hankins, and I just wanted to extend a big thank you to the rest of the board and the commitment to this community and creating prosperity in Nanaimo. And folks, it's very positive to know that many people are out there looking out for Nanaimo, so thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Turley.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to the delegation and all my friends in the audience. I just, too, want to say thank you very much for all your effort, and I echo what all the other councillors have said, that we hope we can develop some sort of relationship that will help Nanaimo move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other councillors? Mr. Hankins, thank you very much for your kind words and for the excellent work that MIBI is doing on behalf of all of us who live in the Central Island. Much appreciated.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
the opportunity.
The next delegation is Mr. Beaton and Ms. Bremner and others. Welcome.
Hello, everybody. Before we start this evening, I would like to recognize the fact that we're on the traditional territory of the Nanaimo people. Antapak Swalakalach. My name is Trent Warren Jack. I'm also a member of the Nanaimo Aboriginal Center Youth Advisory Council, and I'm very honored to be a part of that. I would like to congratulate the mayor and council for their recent election. We look forward to working with you guys for the next 4 years. It's going to be amazing. I would like to recognize our elder and residents, Sally Williams, sitting over here. And I would like to thank you for this opportunity to come up and speak this evening. I would like to ask Joy Bremner, the president of Mid-Island Métis Nation, to speak to you about the National Indigenous Peoples Day on June 21st.
Thank you, Trent. I'm Joy Bremner. I know a number of you personally from previous years and experiences, and welcome all of you to your new seats sitting here this year. We look forward to an enjoyable 4 years with all of you. So Mayor and Council, and I am going to read part of this just so I try and stay to script. Mayor and Council, I'd like to speak to you about National Indigenous Peoples Day that is annually recognized on June 21st, the summer solstice. The City of Nanaimo has supported several of these events over many years. In 2018, the city approved a downtown events grant for the community celebration. On June 21st, National Indigenous Peoples Day, the day that is recognized for all Canadians and celebrate the unique heritage, diverse cultures, and outstanding contributions of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. The Canadian Constitution recognizes these three groups as Aboriginal peoples, also known as Indigenous peoples. We are fortunate in the Mid-Island area and Vancouver Island itself to have Indigenous citizens from across this country living here. So to actually host and put on a large event for that day welcomes and helps them, all of them celebrate that, as well as the general public is completely welcome to our events and make it an even bigger event. Several organizations have hosted community events in Nanaimo since 1996. Over the past 5 years, Mid-Island Métis Nation, Nanaimo Aboriginal Center, and the Boys and Girls Clubs have hosted the only downtown event at Bowen Park, and for the last 2 years at Maffeo Sutton Park. In 2018, we estimated over 4,000 attendees, making it one of the largest events on this date within central Vancouver Island. Now, the government of Canada has recently announced, as an exciting announcement for us, that National Indigenous Peoples Day may become a statutory holiday in 2019. Our request to City Council is a request to make funding for this important day part of its annual budget. We are recommending a budget of $15,000 available for applicants who are hosting a community event on June 21st and hosting it in a public park. Thank you for listening to my words.
Thank you. Mr. Beaton.
Now this says 1:30 left, but I take it I have 6:30 left, right? And if I go with John's watch, I've got 8:30
You
left.
got the lion's share.
So I get a chance to introduce the Indigenous people's place of culture to Mayor and Council, and I appreciate the opportunity to do that. And it comes from a simple question that our elders asked us several years ago, and that is, how do we integrate culture into our everyday lives? So that it's not a special event, it's not a Friday field trip, but it's part of who we are and the lives that we live in our community. This is a unique project in British Columbia, one that is partnered with the Mid-Island Métis Nation, the Boys and Girls Clubs of Central Vancouver Island, and the Nanaimo Aboriginal Center. It is culturally responsive, and in that we mean that It allows all Indigenous people in the city of Nanaimo, of which there are about 6,500, and as Joy just mentioned, a very diverse community from all over the country, First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. It allows all of those Indigenous community members to come together to celebrate, to mourn, to dance, to share culture, to practice their cultures that isn't found in another urban environment in this province, arguably in Western Canada. The other, I think, interesting characteristic of this facility is that it's open to all people, to all community residents. It's proposed at 42,000 square feet. 28,000 square feet of that space would be for cultural activities, with a seating capacity of upwards of 1,000 people. But the facility, so it doesn't sit dormant in between cultural events, would also include 72 licensed childcare spaces, a youth center, an elder center, and family programming. So you've got a very vibrant facility that is active 5 to 7 days of the week, and we hope it's located at Bevan Park, where the Bevan Park Master Plan speaks to increasing usage and traffic at that park, that city park. What you also do is when you bring upwards of 100 families into the space every single day, you give them instant access to all the facilities that are at Bevan Park already. So about 2 years ago, we worked with Richard Harding and other city staff. We presented to council. Council of the day asked us to go back and do an open house, which we did. We had several hundred people attend, community members attend that open house at Bevan Park. We had a great deal of support. I'm sorry I don't have those stats in front of me. But then we came back to council in partnership with the 3 partners that I've mentioned already, but also the Vancouver Island Exhibition, the Nanaimo Equestrian Association, and the Island Roots Farmers Market. And so collectively, we all pitched a vision for development of facilities at Bevan Park. We believe the Indigenous Peoples' Place of Culture supports the Bevan Park Master Plan, which is key to increase traffic and usage at that park. We also believe it supports the development of new childcare, which most of us know that there is a shortage of in this city and on this island. And it also supports the development of new youth programs. I think finally and most importantly, it supports the subject matter and conversation of reconciliation in our communities. I can't think of a better place for Indigenous and non-Indigenous community members to come together, to get to know each other, to build a relationship, to share culture and to share time together. At its heart, we believe that is what reconciliation is. So the purpose of this evening's presentation, twofold, as my friend, who I've forgotten his name now, Trent made us aware, is IPPC and National Indigenous Peoples Day. Sorry. For IPPC, what we're hoping is to put it on council's agenda. We have a new council and a new mayor. We'd like it to be part of your agenda over the next 4 years. We want to also make council aware that we would like to meet with city staff to restart these conversations about the project and to develop a more formal request to council that we could bring at a later date, which may include details for a long-term lease at Bevan Park, considering the waiving either fully or partially of development cost charges, and finally the possibility of city providing some support in terms of connection to city services and some of the civil work that's required, sidewalks and that type of thing. So with that, I see you've got 1 minute and 55 seconds still left. We are open to questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Beaton. Councillor Bonner, saving the day.
Thank you, Your Worship. Can you, I think this is a phenomenal idea, and I really look forward to the idea of the city partnering with NAC and the other organizations to build this place. How do you propose the funding of this will come about?
Yeah, it's a good question, Councillor. Thank you for that. Number one, besides what we've already listed, we will not be asking the city for capital dollars outside of the DCCs and some of the connections to municipal services. We see 1/3 of the funding coming from the Government of Canada. That would be our request to the Government of Canada. 1/3 from the province of British Columbia through Infrastructure Canada. That's a shared responsibility, I think, for the 2 senior levels of government. And then finally, fundraising. We believe with land, connection to services, a third from the feds, a third from the province, that we could successfully and quickly raise the last third of the capital dollars from the private sector, including corporations, foundations, and individuals.
Anyone else? Other question, Councillor Bonner?
Thank you. As less of a question, I just wanted to thank Trent for introducing everyone, and I would probably suggest that you're probably looking at a future mayor here soon. Watch yourself there.
You hardly arrive in the seat and somebody wants it already. Thank you very much. Much appreciated in the work your organization does. The next is Arlen Sansom regarding outbuildings. Mr. Sansom?
Thank you for giving me some time to speak. My question I would like to ask is if you would be willing to reassess the amount of time you're allowed to keep a fabric-covered structure, or actually a car tent, simply put, something you purchase at Canadian Tire. Nonetheless, in today's economy, you have really busy contractors, and if you're trying to do some home renos or something, it can easily take longer than 120 days, which is the current allotted time period. If you need to store a car or something, sometimes we have more than 120 days of rain in the winter, and sometimes we actually have pretty harsh summers with a lot of sun and everything. People with nice cars or something would like to keep them out of the sunlight in the summer as well. So my proposal is possibly to leave them up for maybe up to 2 years, or take the time restraint off, but make other rules that say that it needs to be in good condition. It can't be something ratty with holes, can't be ugly. It has to follow all the proper setbacks and guidelines that are already in place. In the current position, it seems that most bylaw officers never have to deal with enforcing the actual rule for the amount of days. They kind of just take it as a complaint basis. And as a rule, from what it seems, is that's actually usually some sort of altercation between neighbors that don't seem to get along or something that would bring that sort of topic up. So I would just like to ask if you guys are able to reassess the amount of time they're allowed up and see if there's anything you'd like to do.
Thank you, Mr. Sansom. Any questions from members of council? Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you. Through you to possibly staff, maybe the delegation. Are these walled structures? Or
no, it's a
just tents that are
fabric-covered
open?
structure. So it's just thin steel tubing with a fabric that drapes over it, and it's attached securely to the ground. So basically, you call it a car tent as a rule. You pick them up, Canadian Tire, or any place that sells them, usually for a few $100, and they last a couple of years, and then they're usually ripped up, and you throw them out and get rid of them anyway. But by that time, you should have something else sorted out, I think, anyway.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sansom. Appreciate it. Sorry, Councillor Turley.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. Probably through to the staff on this one. So, as a former greenhouse operator, I'm having a little trouble figuring out the difference between this type of structure, other than that the ends aren't covered, and a plastic covered greenhouse. Is there differences in the bylaws with that respect? You can get back to me, it's...
Mr. Lindsay.
Yeah, certainly we can follow up. I think it's probably a longer explanation of how the bylaw applies to, because there's a variety of temporary buildings that are allowed for within the zoning bylaw. But I think generally what's being talked about here tonight is we have a specific definition for fabric-covered structures, and as the speaker was identifying, those are generally to pertain to people who use them for temporarily covering cars or trailers. There's other provisions for accessory buildings in the bylaw, so that would include things like greenhouses or garden sheds, for example.
Thank you.
Thank you. No further questions? Thanks very much.
Thanks for your time.
The next item is a delegation regarding 110 and 114 Fry Street. Mr. Bender. Welcome.
Your Honor and Council. My name is Doug Bender. I live at 104 Esplanade, which is known as Robin's Garden in Nanaimo. I'm here to represent the 37 people who signed a petition regarding DVP 343, which is up there, section 6.2.1 containers at 114 Fry Street. I'm also here as a member of the South End Community Association. Because most of you are new members to the council, I will give you a bit of a brief history regarding the variance application. Last March, we received a notice that Omni Foods had applied for a variance to allow 2 large portable refrigeration units to remain in place on their property at 114 Fry Street. Without permission from the city, Omni Foods had already installed these units, and we're hoping that the city would grant permission to allow these containers to remain on site for 12 months. Also note that the bylaw only allows for a small refrigeration unit, such as a truck, to be on site for a maximum of 30 days per year. However, the neighbors were in agreement that the noise generated by these units 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, were not acceptable, the noise from those. The decibel readings taken at the street was 80, and at approximately 225 feet across the street, which happened to be where I live, the readings was 45 decibels, which is the sound of a lawnmower running. The petition to deny this application was signed by the 37 immediate neighbors, and the petition was presented to City Council on the March 19th council meeting. At that meeting, council carried a motion that the sound needed to be mitigated to an acceptable level within 30 days, and that the refrigeration units could remain on the site for a total of 6 months. This meant that the units could stay on the property until September the 19th of 2018. It was also agreed that there would be no further extension for this 6-month unit. However, on the 30-day sound mitigation limit, nothing had been initiated by the company, and I again appeared before council on May the 14th about this issue, and it was not until the end of June that mitigation was installed. At that time, the mitigation made absolutely no difference to the sound. The decibels were taken again, and they were the same. So nothing was done with it. So we now have lived with noise from these containers for the last 8.5 months. They're now past 2.5 months past the original 6 months. And this was right through the summer months, forcing us to all keep our windows closed at night because of the sound, and also not enjoying our patios very much. The 6-month limit for this variance application, as I said, ended September the 19th, and nothing has changed. They're still operating, they're still running. We believe that the Omni Foods is likely to apply for council for another extension. I'm not sure, and we note that the units are portable. They're portable units and should have been relocated over 2 months ago as per council's order. Omni Foods does have other locations which are less intrusive, and I think they probably should be placed there if they want to keep them running. I think our patience has run out, and we respectfully request that the council deny any further requests to extend this variance, and that a notice to remove these units, or at least turn them off, be immediately issued to Omni Foods. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bender. Councillor Armstrong.
I'll wait. My question's for staff, so I'll wait till it's appropriate for the staff question.
Okay. Any other members of council? Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you. Through you to the delegation. Now that you're not outside and on your patios with your doors and windows open, what does this sound like now that you're inside and it's winter?
Oh, you can still hear them.
Okay.
Yeah, you can still hear them. It's just that you really can't have your windows open or really enjoy your patio at all. So, and it's, as the handout that I gave you there, it's those 37 people who are right around that particular area there. So everybody hears them. So it's,
Thank you.
okay.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, through your chair, to staff. I've been involved with this from the start. I've gone down to the site 2 or 3 times, and even in my car, you can hear it very loudly. I don't know if it's appropriate time or not, but I do want to make a notice of motion later to have staff enforce the non-compliance of the bylaw.
Thank you. Okay.
I think that we've given them ample opportunity, so I guess this would be my notice of intent, Ms. Gurry. Is that correct, or does that need to be done differently?
Ms. Gurry?
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Armstrong. Councillor Armstrong has every right to make a notice of motion later on in this meeting, and then it could be dealt with at the next council meeting. Normally, notices of motion are done at council meetings, but it's council's pleasure to do as they choose, and so a notice of motion later under other business would be appropriate, and then it could be dealt with at the December 3rd council meeting.
Thank you. That's what I'll be doing then, Your Worship.
Thank you, Ms. Gurry. Councillor Turley, for Hemmons again.
Again. My question is actually for staff, so I might be jumping the queue here.
Well, I'm not too concerned about the queue. You ask your question, then we'll get to Councillor Turley, who's
Okay.
behind you on my screen here, and I'm going to listen to the screen.
Okay, thank you. Through you then to staff. When a business is issued an order to comply with noise mitigation, is there any follow-up from the city to ensure that it's been done? And if there is there a standard protocol around this is the type of mitigation that we would expect to see?
Through the chair to Councillor Hemmons, in this case, putting sound attenuation as a condition of a DVP is a somewhat unusual condition, to be honest, and especially when there's no measure of what is successful compliance. It just says sound mitigation. So in this case, the owners, and following the timeline I think that the delegation has spoke to, did ultimately put some mitigation in place, provided us with a report that showed a decrease in the decibel levels. But from our review of that report, they're probably at such a level that it would be difficult for the average person, to discern a difference. Measurably different, but not necessarily different for a person living in the neighborhood to identify it or be able to quantify that.
Thank you, Mr. Lindsay. Councillor Turley.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, through you to Mr. Lindsay. I'm assuming they needed permits to fix the roof, and have they been issued?
There's 2 items through the chair that I can update council on. One is the building permit has very recently been issued for the remediation. I think it was actually last week, if I recall correctly. Second is today, the applicants have made an application for a development variance permit. So to ask for additional time to maintain the units in place. And in the absence of further direction from council, that application will come forward on December 17th, I believe is the next. December 17th would be the next opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Bender. Appreciate your time. And finally, Les Barclay, regarding the top 10 list for Nanaimo. Mr. Barclay, please.
Your Worship and Council, thank you for allowing me to share some thoughts that I hope can help guide you in your deliberations and choices the next 4 years. Nanaimo elected you to exercise your intelligence and judgment on the many decisions you'll have to make. But in a democracy, it's your responsibility to listen to citizens and make your decisions based on the informed will of the public. Don't let your enthusiasm or your idealism impair your ability to make sound decisions about the quality of life in Nanaimo. Here are my top 10 issues going forward. First, transportation plan. The plan needs an update. It's a mess in Nanaimo in many places, as you heard at many of you heard at last week's community engagement session. I think we need to prepare for ride hailing, for car sharing, for self-driving and electric cars, maybe even electric scooters. I hope the fast ferry is coming in 2019. Our roads need to be made safer for all users. Make a decision about the ENN or facilitate one. This is a tremendously lost opportunity. The parkway can be downright ugly at times, especially when there's an accident or a ferry has arrived. I don't want utopian planning here. Be practical and engaged. This is about quality of life, productivity, and the environment. Number 2, parks and recreation. Please get it done, starting with the waterfront walkway, Bibbin Park, Maffeo Sutton Park, the Greater Nanaimo watershed lands. You've done the consultation and have the plans. Let's go. Number 3, Port Drive waterfront plan. Please do it well. Don't let the developers run roughshod. I want grassy vistas and public, I'm behind. I want grassy vistas and public space, not dead blacktop. I have qualms about the plan presented earlier this year, as I remember what happened to Maffeo Sutton Park and the old Civic Arena. Look at Sydney. There's a wonderful waterfront development. Number 4, housing. Whether matters of homelessness or affordability or building urban nodes, this is a primary challenge you well know. It's a complicated municipal responsibility. I hope you're able to collaborate with other levels of government in moving forward. You cannot create housing affordability, but you can help enable it. Adding costs to homeowners and landlords and developers will not improve affordability. You have a plan, follow it and modify as necessary, balance aesthetics and utility, and consult with neighborhoods. A better governing process equals better democracy. Please address the flaws in the new procedural bylaw. Engage with citizens before making decisions that impact them, like supportive housing in the neighborhoods. Long meetings and closed meetings are anathema to an open society. The Finance and Audit Committee should be seen for what it is, a vitally important deliberation body whereby decisions are often come to council after this are often fait accompli. Please do not create new costly and possibly ineffectual elite groups. I'm thinking of the new Economic Development Council or DNBIA. I'm missing number 6 on the slides. It's crime and public safety, which connects to many other items. We know the homicide rate in BC is at 10-year high. Be cognizant of this. I suspect much of the crime that we're witnessing is fed by the demand for drugs. Simply throwing money at the problem, however, won't fix it. Okay, number 7, and this relates to number 6, this is the core services review. Please finish implementing part 1 and do part 2. Fire and policing are a significant draw on city resources. Efficiency means proficiency. Number 8, downtown Nanaimo. Fix it, starting with Diana Krall Center. Deal with vacant and derelict buildings. Let's try to make downtown beautiful. Be wary of tax holidays and ugly design. Increased density in and of itself won't make it beautiful and busy. Number 9, stronger neighborhoods and volunteer community groups working together make for a happier and a more unified community grassroots that you can consult and draw from instead of spending millions on elite consultants. There's so much you can do to draw on and help strengthen this. We also need an accounting on how much this is spent on consultants in recent years. And finally, spending and taxation, which may conflict with some of my first 9. My income goes up maybe 2% a year, so tax increases beyond that are a burden to me and most citizens. Last year, property taxes went up almost 6%. Councillor Bonner has stated that he thinks the city budget should move with inflation. I would add population growth when you're considering that. Municipal spending in BC between 2006 and 2016 increased 43%, according to the CFIB. Nanaimo ranked 46th out of 150, which isn't too bad, but it jumped from 38th spot before. You're in charge of a $180 million budget. Don't foster the creation of an angry taxpayers of Nanaimo Association. So, there you are. If you try to do everything, council and worship, if you try to do everything or please everyone, you'll do nothing well. Please focus and consult and decide well.
Thank you, Mr. Barclay. Councillor Martman.
Through you, sir, to the delegation. I'm just wondering, previously you said our new procedure bylaw. I'm out of curiosity. What do you consider the flaws?
Some of the flaws. I mentioned, I spoke to council, I think earlier on, and let me just find my notes on here. I'm some concerned with the 5-minute, I managed it today, But it's a challenge. I've spoken also of the amount of time for councillors speaking. I think 5 minutes is a little extensive. I would push that down. Those are a couple of the issues that just come off the top of my head.
Thank you.
Yeah. If you talk to Ron Boland, he will give you some more expertise feedback on that.
No further questions? Thank you very much, Mr. Barclay. Appreciate it. The next item is reports. The regulation of single-use plastic checkout bags. Mr. Sims, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to introduce Mr. David Thompson. He's our Manager of Sanitation, Recycling, and he'll walk you through the report that's in front of you this evening.
Thank you. Please.
Thank you. Good evening. Here to speak to you tonight about a proposed regulation for single-use plastic checkout bags. Approximately a year ago, this was brought up to Council. At that time, Council instructed staff to go away and report back with options. At that point in time, the City of Victoria's proposed plastic bag regulation was under a legal review, so the advice at that point was to wait until that was settled before providing further direction to Council. That's since been settled over the summer, and Victoria has implemented their plastic bag bylaw. Other jurisdictions are following suit locally, Canada-wide, and internationally, fundamentally to reduce the reliance on single-use plastic items. When we look at the local environment, plastic bags are not included in the city's curbside collection program, so they go through the Recycle BC depot collection program. So information from Recycle BC on that suggests that about 70% of that material is successfully collected and diverted from disposal, but that still leaves 30% that is unaccounted for. So at this point in time, a number of local retailers are using incentives to encourage shoppers to reuse bags through either a combination of discounts for providing your own bag or small charges for either plastic or paper bags. So at this point in time, we're looking for staff direction as to how to proceed. Our recommendation at this point in time is to engage in a consultation process and come back to Council with feedback from that process.
Thank you. Ms. Correa, I look to you for advice. Appropriate to ask council members to ask questions now of staff and then move to the delegation, or?
Thank you, Your Worship. It is appropriate now for you to ask questions of staff regarding the report. You can then receive the report, but before, or if you plan to make a recommendation based on the staff report, you need to hear from the delegation prior to doing that.
Thank you. Any questions of staff? Councillor Armstrong.
I'm sorry, I forgot.
Pardon me, sorry.
I forgot to ask if we could actually, for this delegation, increase it to 10 minutes as well.
So, Your Worship, Councillor Armstrong would need to make that motion, have it seconded, and have all it be unanimous.
So I'd like to make that motion that the delegation be given 10 minutes to speak to this issue.
And do we have a seconder?
Second.
Councillor Hemmons, I think, beat Councillor Brown. Any discussion? There is no discussion. All those in favor? Contrary? It's carried. So, any further questions of staff? Councillor Martman.
Through you to staff, you said consultations. How much does consultations cost? Pardon?
I would have, through Your Worship, I would have to get back to you on that.
But there is a cost to it.
There would be a cost. It's currently unbudgeted. Consultation, as it's currently contemplated, would be fairly lightweight, gathering public comments and reaching out to the business community to have some discussions around the mechanics of an implementation.
Thank you. I guess.
Mr. Rudolph.
Your Worship, I think that's a question that
staff could put back to council in terms of direction as to the extent of consultation you would be looking for. I understand the City of Victoria consultation process was rather lengthy and extensive, which would be quite expensive. Depends if you do an online version on our website, if you do one or two meetings, that type of thing. You can do it and be effective and do it in a multifaceted way. It wouldn't have to necessarily take a long time or be that extensive to be effective. So it depends on how much of a consultation process council feels it's necessary to answer that question. So there's really no one answer to that.
Councillor Martman?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Another question to staff through you, Chair. Have you also looked at the Vancouver bylaw? Because I understand that they've now implemented a similar one, as going so far as well as straws.
Through the chair to Councillor Armstrong, Vancouver has taken a rather unique approach. They have implemented a strategy to reduce and eliminate the use of all single-use plastic items, so plastic straws, plastic bags, takeout containers, polystyrene, and disposable cups. And so their bylaw is considerably, or their regulation and strategy is considerably different than the approach Victoria has taken.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Martman, then Councillor Turley.
Just for clarification, we don't need to proceed with consultation, so if the council of the day so willed to make this happen, correct? Through the chair to whom?
Mr. Rudolph.
Your Worship, that's correct. The recommendation embodies a recommendation to include some form of consultation, but council could, through its instincts or direction, direct that that not be necessary. I'm not sure in terms of process to adopt a bylaw or something like that, if there would be a consultation process formally part of that. So that's over and above any approval process. That might be something for Ms. Gurry, but the actual consultation is could be defer it for a month and see if there's anybody that shows up, or you could be directing it that it be ads in the paper, a meeting, something on the website, seeking input. That is a variety of things, but there's probably a formal part that would include some form of consultation as well, and that probably be a good idea to get some informed opinion on that.
Thank you.
Councillor Turley.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to the staff. Has there ever been any thought or discussion about joining with other municipalities to work with the province to establish a program similar to that recycles pop cans and beer cans and all that sort of thing? The benefit, of course, not only is it is a recyclable product, I believe, and the benefit would be it provide other sources of income from entities like the Navy cadets to recycle and get money for the recycled product.
Through the chair to Councillor Turley. Right now, the plastic bags are considered packaging under the provincial recycling regulations, so they are managed provincially. However, the specific regulations as to their use locally is done on a municipality by municipality basis.
So the answer is no, then?
The answer is no. Well, there is a mechanism provincially,
Okay,
but
yeah.
not what you're asking for.
Yeah, thank you.
Any further questions for staff before we receive Mr. Hughes and the 10 minutes allotted to him? None? Mr. Hughes? Welcome. You have 10 minutes.
Okay. I'm not sure how to use this. Just push the button. See? Good evening. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. About a year ago, we made a presentation, Kirley Park, Paul Menley and myself, to Councillor about a levy on plastic bag. The idea was to charge 10 cents. Councillors were quite surprised to the negative impact of the plastic bags or grocery bags or shopping bags on the environment, so they decided instead to implement a ban. If it was permitted by the law, which it was, we can look at Victoria, and it was to be done as soon as possible. That was a year ago. So the comments following our presentation from councillors prior to the vote were as follow. And if you look, many comments refer to leadership, to just go ahead and do it. One says, I'm interested in the future, everyone has kids and grandkids, and so on and so on. Following the presentation, after a few months of what I thought was inaction, I contacted a number of staff, city staff, and I had a lot of nice discussion about what was going on. And I'm sure everybody thinks it's a good idea. For some reason, there was little action. And these are the comments I received from the staff, and the city staff again. And again, it's just a matter of short on staff, other things are more important, and so on. And then the last one, more likely a 2-year timeline, which is not very good. What happened since December of last year? Well, as we just mentioned, there was some legal advice given to councillor. I asked for that date, and I couldn't get that date. There was an in-camera report on June 11th, and today on June 26th, there's the report presented to councils. In other places, this is what happened. Some of those points have been covered. On September 13, UBCM called for the 5th time. We're talking about a global provincial action here. And again, for the 5th time, for the provincial government to develop some strategies to reduce packaging and plastic in BC. Nothing has been done to this date. Last month, the European Parliament voted for a ban on a wide range of single-use plastic, including plastic bag. On March 1st of next year, Parksville was supposed to implement a ban, but now they've postponed it with the new councillor. And then in the fall, that was also mentioned, there's going to be a plastic drinking straw ban in Vancouver. That's the first larger city in Canada. As far as I know, it's only for plastic drinking straw. I'm going to quickly go over what we presented last year, because most of you are new, so bear with me. Canadians use more than 3 billion plastic bags per year. That's data of this year. That's just a bit more than 200 bags per person per year. These are the disposable bags you get at any kind of retail store or grocery stores. And so far in Canada, we only have 8 cities that have banned plastic bags. There's Victoria in BC, there's one in Alberta, a couple in Manitoba, and a few in Quebec. PEI will be the first province next year to have a province-wide plastic bag ban. And there's a list of countries who have come up with a ban, a levy, or a combination of both. And then the last one, which is something that many of you might be aware, is many municipalities in BC and on the island have been discussing banning plastic bags for a very long time. And so far only Victoria has done so. This just shows you that it's a variety all around the world. You have a ban, a charge, voluntary charge, or partial charge. And partial charge would be including BC, Alberta, Manitoba, and Quebec. What I find out to a number of different research sources is that only about 5% of the plastic bags, that's not just plastics, plastic bags, are recycled in the US. Canada does a little better. Those bags are not recycled, will take about 300 years to break down, and they never disappear. I'll talk about this later on. They become what we call microplastic. The argument often is that if plastic bags are bad, what about paper bags? Well, the issue with paper bags, they require 5 times more water to produce and 3 times more energy to produce, but they're organic, therefore they're not bad for the environment if they break down. But switching from plastic bag to paper bag is not good. So the idea is to ban single-use shopping bag, not plastic bag only. That's for us specifically in Canada. Again, less than 11% of the plastic are recycled in Canada. 90% of it, therefore, goes into incinerators, landfill, lake, parks, and ocean. Once in the environment, they will pollute, they will contaminate, and they will have negative impact. This is just the large picture. Worldwide, we use 5 trillion bags per year. We dump almost 9 million tons of plastic in the ocean. As a result of that, over 700 marine species are currently in danger of extinction because of the amount of plastic we have in the ocean. You might have seen this one. It's kind of a shocker. By 2050, we expect there'll be more plastic in the ocean than fish. Currently, it's about a 1-to-5 ratio. It will be a greater than 1 ratio in about 32 years. Last year, Nanaimo retail stores gave away 46,000 bags per day. That's not a typo. That's the number of bags that's given in Nanaimo every single day. That was before some of the stores on April 22nd, on Earth Day, decided to charge a levy between 5 and 15 cents, depending on the store. Some of them are grocery stores, some of them are retail stores. What it did is as some of the stores who were not charging attract more customers, because what I've heard from the store that I've charged a levy is that some customers have said, well, if you're charging me from bags, I'm just going to go somewhere else. So essentially, the stores who have started to charge to help the environment are getting penalized. I'm now going to show you a number of slides about the negative impact on the environment, and I could have shown you hundreds and hundreds of slides. I'm going to limit it to just a few. In that plastic bag, there's a baby otter stuck. That's the Nanaimo landfill picture I took last year. If you zoom in, you see that most of those bags are not garbage bags. They're single-use plastic bags. Because they're free or very, very cheap, what you find in a normal garbage bag is 5, 10, 15 smaller plastic bags that come from the grocery because they cost nothing. So they're not recycled, they're just thrown away. I refer to microplastic. Microplastic are just the plastic that breaks down from plastic bag, because plastic bags are non-organic. They're made of polyethylene. They will eventually break down. It takes about 300 years, but they never disappear. It looks like this after a few years, then it breaks down to smaller section, and then at the end, they pretty much look like this. So they get reabsorbed by animals, and now they're finding out they can even be reabsorbed by plant, and we don't know the effect or the impact on human health. We know negative impact on wildlife. We're not sure exactly of the impact of human health so far. Why we don't have a bylaw so far, I'm not exactly sure why, but there's no need to reinvent the wheel. That's the Montreal bylaw. That's the Victoria bylaw. So where we are now, almost a year later, very little has been done as far as I'm concerned. So because of that, everyday plastic bags are produced, shipped, distributed, and discarded in the environment. So there you go. Since last year, 9.5 million plastic bags have been given away in Nanaimo. And this number, I can run the math by anyone if you would like to. If you think about 5 to 10% recycled, that means that close to 9 million of those bags are just being thrown away or just discarded in the environment. And that's only since last year, only for Nanaimo. So I'm almost done. So this is what I suggest that's been done, is to act and be a leader. So implement a ban on all single-use bags, not just plastic bags, for January 1st of next year. Give retailer a 6-month period to transition. That's what Montreal did and did Victoria. This way there's no penalty. They just know that by July 1st, they will start to pay the bylaw and the penalty. Or you can opt for more consultation, report, surveys, and then see how many more plastic bags are going to be produced and thrown away. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hughes. Councillor Turley.
Oh, okay, that wasn't where I beat, but I will ask a question. So through you, Your Worship, that's okay. So just to clarify, the ban you're proposing is all single-use bags, no matter what business or what use?
Yeah, the proper wording is single-use shopping bag, or single-use retail store bag, or single-use bags. It's plastic and paper. If it's less than, I think if it's, they call it 30 or 40 micron. If it's a thicker bag like they have in Montreal, that can be used over and over again, it's fine, because people just don't discard those bags. They use them as regular fabric bag or cotton bags. The issue is with the small bag that you get for free or you pay 5 cents for at the grocery store or retail store. These are the ones that have a very negative impact on the environment.
So if I could just ask one further thing. So as a former retail florist, we use smaller bags to hold moisture on the stem ends of flowers for cut flower bouquets. You're anticipating those would be banned as well?
Are those given to you at a retail store or a grocery store? Or are they given to you at a retail store?
when we sell flowers,
Yeah.
we include a plastic bag
Yeah.
with wet tissue to keep the stem ends moist?
Yeah.
And my question is that included in your proposal for?
There
a ban?
are a number of exceptions. If you look at those bylaws, I think that's been addressed. The same with the meat in the grocery store. The same with, I think, the plastic they use for laundry if you go to a dry cleaner.
Yeah.
There is, like I said, there's no need to reinvent the wheel. This has been done in Montreal in January and July in Victoria. And I think they left some accommodation for those special cases.
So there are
yes.
exceptions?
We're talking about like 95% of the what we call retail store bags, like the bag that you don't have to have if you bring your own cotton bag. But if the product or material is wet, I guess you can have a plastic. That won't count for too much. Yeah.
Any further questions for the delegation? Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to the delegation. Sometimes when you're going out shopping, you go like, say, to a place like the Bay or something, and they have larger items, then you put those all in a very large bag. Typically, it's a plastic bag. Is there some options for what we could do for those type of bags, which would be single-use bags, but big bags?
I'm not sure I understand the question, sorry.
Well, well, it just happened to me recently. I bought a bunch of stuff at the mall,
Yeah.
and they put them all in a big bag,
Yeah.
so I could carry them out.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like a grocery bag. It was big bag, but it was plastic.
Yeah.
So is there, and I have recyclable bags for my groceries, but I don't have big bags for the department stores or something like that when I'm going there.
Yeah, I'm assuming there was a thicker bag, more than 40 microns, so that bag was designed to be reused. I haven't seen the very large bags that can just be thrown away or recycled. But again, that will be a detail to iron out in the bylaw. If there's some exception to be made, I'm sure they've been made before.
Right.
Thank you. Anything further? No further questions? Councillor Gesselbrock.
I move that council direct staff to create a bylaw regulating single-use checkout bags through a process that includes consultation and builds on the work already done in other jurisdictions such as Victoria.
Seconded, Councillor Bonner. Any discussion? Councillor Brown.
I am still curious after reading the staff report and listening to the discussion why exactly we need consultation. Understanding that Victoria has implemented it, it seems like a pretty low-risk item, so I'm just curious what we would actually be consulting on.
Mr. Rudolph?
Well, Your Worship, given the large number of municipalities that do not participate in this program and the few that do, it suggests that it's not something that everybody would necessarily embrace. There's a bit of not a communication, but an education process around this. So as a bit of checks and balances, you might get a divergence of opinion on this. So it's sort of the flip side of the coin kind of argument that you might have heard before, is that it would be good just to make sure that you're getting all these stakeholders that might have an interest in this, particularly the retail community. I suspect they might have an opinion on this to comment on it. Not to say that you wouldn't do it. If it was the resolve of council, you can certainly do it, but the advice is that our staff advice is that you probably would want to do a gut check in this community to see what the temperature is in terms of people's support for that. And it won't be unanimous. And it's certainly council's prerogative to choose what it wishes. And you could go ahead without public consultation, I guess, but in this case, given the issue, it appears that it would be wise to find some mechanism without protracting a protracted process. It could be a matter of 2 or 3 months, and then revisit the matter. On the other hand, if council's more proactive and wants to get on with it, again, I defer to Ms. Gurry if there's a requirement at the bylaw stage. That could be a consultation piece as well, to wait, go ahead, draft it, and then get input at that stage. So the question is more one of process as opposed to necessarily merit, so she might have a comment on that.
Before Ms. Gray answers, Mr. Hughes, I'd invite you to sit down and relax. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, and responding to what Mr. Rudolph was saying. So the motion, as I understand it, might be what was written as well as with the additional wording at the end, but I just wanted to at first make sure I had the motion clear before I respond. And that was that council directs staff to proceed with consultations to implement a bylaw regulating the use of single-use plastic checkout bags, and that the city of Nanaimo use the Victoria bylaw as an example. Is that, no?
Close out. Just make sure I'm on here, thank you. I did change the wording actually quite intentionally.
Okay.
I think speaking to Tyler's question, Victoria spent 2 years in consultation very extensively with all the businesses, looking at exemptions. For example, like florists do need to put a small plastic bag on the bottom of flowers. That's exempt. Meat packaging, there's about a list of 10, 12. There's also consideration around a phased implementation because some businesses have stores of bags. So that groundwork on what works for businesses, because Victoria is a very similar context in Nanaimo, has been done. So we do not need to reinvent the wheel and consult for 2 years. I think as a matter of due process, it's always good before a bylaw to do a gut check, see what the community has to say. This doesn't have to be prolonged. So in the bylaw I move that council direct staff to go ahead, create a bylaw regulating single-use checkout bags through a process that does include some form of consultation, but builds on the work that's already been done in terms of lengthy processes.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Councillor Gesselbrock. So my suggestion would be that based on what Mr. Rudolph is saying, and I have looked, there is no like ministry requirements or that sort of thing for that Victoria had, which would then therefore we wouldn't need here in Nanaimo as well to pass a bylaw such as this. But what I would suggest is that you direct staff to not implement a bylaw, because actually council would be the ones that would be implementing a bylaw, but that staff come back to you with a draft bylaw for your consideration, and that we bring it to the December, or as soon as we can get a draft bylaw to you, that you would then review that draft, and then it would come back to you at the next council meeting for 3 readings once you were okay with that draft. And when it came to a council meeting in a draft form, that would be the public's opportunity as well to come and speak to it on both sides of the matter, speaking to the draft and what they think of it. So that is one way council could go with that motion if they were amenable. And there was one other portion that I was going to say. Oh yes, that not only would staff need to work on a draft for this specific ban, but would also need to work on its ticket and enforcement bylaw. It would need to be an amendment to that bylaw as well, so that this bylaw would be enforceable. And so there would need to be some internal coordination as well with staff to actually draft this bylaw, as well as make sure that it's coincides with our other ones that we have as well.
Thank you, Ms. Gurry. I have a number of councillors ready to speak to this, and I want to thank Ms. Gurry for her useful suggestions around the process here. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will support the motion that Councillor Gesselbrock has put forward. I think it's reasonable. I want to see us go down this road, and I understand the frustration that it's taken us this long to get very little progress made on this file, but there are reasons behind that. So I apologize to the delegation. I'm sure he's frustrated. I do want to see us move forward on this, but I do not want to do this without some consultation with our community, and especially with our business community. I think we owe that to the community to make sure that we are getting their pulse on this issue. It doesn't have to be a lengthy, drawn-out process, but I would be much more comfortable doing that consultation and then moving ahead with a bylaw, using others as models. So as has been stated, it would not have to take as long as it took Victoria, and we wouldn't have to reinvent the wheel. But this is a big issue. It affects a lot of people. It affects businesses seriously, and I think they have to be prepared for this, and we need to talk to them before we continue. So in my opinion, as I said, I'll support the motion. I want to see this move forward, but I want to see it done properly and carefully. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thorpe. Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Your Worship. I share the words of Councillor Thorpe, and I'll just take it one line further. I would like to see possibly the draft or the bylaw from Victoria shared with perhaps MIMBY and the chamber, so it can be shared without the business community, so they know what they're getting at too. And I would actually like to take it a step further, where we look and see what they think would be a reasonable timeline for us to implement that prior to enforcement of the bylaw, to give them the opportunity to comply. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll support this motion as well. When this first came before council earlier, I went around to many of the places where I did shopping and asked them about the changes. I noticed right off the bat that the grocery stores have implemented the charge, but they haven't done the rest of it. However, there were some questions regarding ergonomics for the cashiers who were working on the till and working with these bags that were coming through. So I would like to hear from the various business sector. I think I already know what the general population feels, but certainly implementation of this plan and how the best way to go about it.
Thank you, Councillor Marmon.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. And I just want to say everybody else has spoken very well to it, so I also support this motion, and I just hope that we can get it done sooner than later.
Councillor Hemmons.
I also support the motion, and I, echoing Councillor Thorpe, I think this council is interested in a lot of change, and change that might be a challenge for some folks, and so I think setting a tone of consultation at the outset is going to be important. And I agree, Councillor Gesselbach, that Victoria has done the heavy lifting here and we can learn from them, but we do have a unique business community, and I'd like to do as Mr. Rudolph suggested, and just do a gut check-in to make sure that we're not forcing this in a way that is uncomfortable for the community and could create backlash for future moves towards things that we're all really interested in.
Thank you, Councillor Turley.
Yes, Your Worship. I'm having trouble with this, and until I know the answer to the following question, I'm going to probably have to say no. And that is, do we know who or what entity instituted the legal action in Victoria and for what reason? Because I don't want to go down the road of having a significant legal battle here as well, because just because the court in Victoria said overturned, it doesn't mean they will here. So,
is that a question staff can answer?
Through the chair to Councillor Turley, it was the Retail Council of Canada that launched that legal challenge.
So they got money.
And they lost.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean they're going to lose here.
Thank you, Councillor Turley. Councillor Gesselbach.
This issue of single-use items is very important to me. I obviously support this motion. These microplastics are starting to show up everywhere, and there's a great our National Geographic that outlines the degree of impact on the planet and starting to get close to what we're seeing with climate change. These materials are showing up too, and we're having into our municipality, and we're having to spend a lot of taxpayers' money managing them in our waste management stream. And I think the movement to regulating these single-use products at source is going to save our community a lot of environmental damage, but also a lot of money down the road. And so, regulating the single-use plastic bags is a symbolic step, and I hope eventually is part of a larger program once we get sorted out with proper consultation, similar to what Vancouver is going on. Just to put this into perspective, the average Canadian uses one plastic bag a day, and the average Danish citizen uses an average of 4 per year. And this is because the Danes began passing the first plastic bag regulations in 1993, around when this problem was first identified. I was in elementary school at that time, and I remember people telling me that this was an issue back then, and I'm now not in elementary school, and it's still an issue. So I hope that we can just get on doing what's right before we build economies around these materials, which then makes it difficult for the business community to untangle them. So better sooner than later. So I hope we can build on the good work that's already been done and get off to a good start. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gesselbrock. Councillor Brown.
Yeah, I'd like to echo Councillor Gesselbrock's sentiment, and just my reading from the June 19th ruling by Justice Smith was that the ban was valid because of the impact it had on city services, not due to environmental reasons, which falls to the province. So I think that's an important distinction in that ruling. But I'm still coming back to what actually are we consulting on? I am supportive of the motion here, but are we consulting on implementation timelines? Are we consulting on the intricacies of the bylaw, what it includes, what doesn't include? Or are we consulting on whether we're doing this at all based on the community? That's not clear to me. So again, I am supportive of the motion, but I'm hearing a lot of support for, I think I'm hearing a lot of support for the actual banning of checkout bags. But again, what is the consultation?
Perhaps it would be useful for Council before we vote on this, as I have no further speakers on my list, if Ms. Goury could read to us what she thinks the motion is. I don't say that with any sarcasm. I think we all have stated our bold and good intentions, but what exactly we're asking or directing staff to do, and it is a direction, I might add, not asking, it's a direction from Council that we be clear so that they can do their work usefully and expeditiously, and achieve what is hopefully everyone's end. So, Ms. Goury.
Thank you, Worship, and please correct me, Councillor Gesselbrock, if I'm incorrect, because you were clear and it makes perfect sense, but the wording's a whole other story in my head. So it's that Council direct staff to proceed with the implementation of a bylaw regulating the use of single-use plastic checkout bags after consultation, using Victoria as an example and model moving forward, and present it and bring it back to Council for further direction or guidance.
Excuse me, but I'm going to pull in the mayor's office here. My understanding was it was to draft, not implement. You cannot implement a bylaw. It has to be passed by this council, so it is a question of drafting the bylaw. So where it says implement, it should say draft. And my expectation, and I suspect the hope of most members of council, is that in seeing that draft, then it will be much easier for us to have a meaningful consultation, short or brief, or as abbreviated as it might be, so that the people of this community will know what their council is actually doing and have an opportunity to offer their comments to us. I think in light of Mr. Barclay's comments earlier tonight about us being the will of the voters, that would be a wise course. Are we agreed on the motion then? Can we have it reread one more time?
Your Worship, I would actually, if you're amenable, to have Councillor Gesselbrock actually read his intention himself, but with the word draft in there.
Asking the... Hello?
You're on.
I think I'm on now. Asking the rookie here, our worship articulated it quite well, but I move that council direct staff to draft a bylaw regulating single-use checkout bags, and in that process, ensure that some consultation has occurred to get the pulse and make sure the needs are met of the community.
Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you. A point of clarification, I believe, for Councillor Gesselbrock. We're going to draft a bylaw and then go out and consult on that bylaw. We're not going to, you guys aren't going to consult on our behalf and then bring us a draft bylaw with that. Okay. So I think in your motion, I'm hearing that staff is going to do some consultation and then bring us a bylaw. Is that incorrect? Sorry.
We have incredibly competent staff, and I think the intention is to make sure that we're drafting a bylaw that is regulating single-use bags, and just making sure consultation is part of that process in doing so, to make sure that the details of it make sense to the particular context here in Nanaimo. Help me, somebody.
And thank you, Your
Correct
Worship.
me if I'm...
I'll just jump in really quick here too as well. So the consultation could be a two-step. It could be when staff have completed the drafting of the bylaw and it comes before council in a draft format. That's a consultation process in and itself. As well, throughout the process, if staff feels that a public house or some sort of further consultation is required, they could come back to council and suggest that or let council know that opportunity is coming forward. But basically, staff would implement a plan. And as for the wording on the motions, the intent, I believe, is really clear. If staff are uncertain after the meeting is over that we're not crystal clear on the intention of the motion, we will check with the councillor, but we always make the motion sound really good on paper, so we don't need to worry too much, Councillor Gesselbrock, for your choice of words right now. We get the intent and we'll make it sound professional. Thank you.
Councillor Thorpe. This is going to take a
Thank
while,
you.
and I'm learning
Thank you, Your
some skills
Worship.
as chairman that I don't have, unfortunately, but I'll try and bring this to a close at some point.
And so I'll take the hint and be brief. But first of all, I want to be clear on what I'm voting on. And when Councillor Gesselbrock read his latest iteration of the motion, I did not hear the word plastic. So either I misheard or he misspoke. And secondly, I'm still not clear whether we're doing some consultation to the community first and then proceeding to a draft bylaw, or whether we're drafting a bylaw first and then asking for response to that. And I guess I would like that clarified. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thorpe. Councillor Brown.
Okay. Just how does this sound for motion? That council directs staff to prepare a bylaw to regulate the use of single-use checkout bags using the City of Victoria's bylaw as a model and prepare a consultation plan for council's review.
Now that sounds like a motion.
And Your Worship, could we just add the word plastic in there if that was the intent?
The Victoria model is concerning single-use checkout bags, not necessarily specific to plastic.
Okay, so just so all of council's clear and okay with that, because...
I'm not sure whether I have the discretion to accept that as a friendly amendment, but unless I see objection from the members of council, that's what I think we're going to do, and then we're going to give Councillor Turley an opportunity to speak to it.
The mover and the seconder, if they agree.
Yes, let's have the mover and the seconder.
I agree.
So who's moving? Councillor Hemmons?
It was Gesselbrock that moved it.
Right, Councillor Gesselbrock, you're moving the motion as so artfully and carefully recited by Councillor Brown.
I am moving the motion that's so articulately expressed by Councillor Brown.
We're making progress, and seconded by Councillor
And I'm
Hemmons.
agreeing to the
Friendly amendment.
as the seconder.
Thank you. As long as we won't be challenged in court someday, I'm sure we'll be fine. Councillor Turley.
Yes, Your Worship, the only concern I have now that I'm starting to feel a little more comfortable is the definition of regulate.
Of what?
Regulate.
Definition of regulate.
Oh.
Can that be part of the consultation?
I think in fairness, I appreciate your concern, but there's going to be a draft bylaw, and unless we move to adopt it, that would be the appropriate time for us to raise those particular questions. I think this, with great respect to everybody, moves us down the field considerably further than we have gone before. It gives us something tangible that staff can actually work with and provide useful involvement and comment on, and gets us to where we want to go within reason, and I'm grateful to Councillor Brown for his assistance in this. Any further speakers on this issue? And just for the sake of clarity, one more time, let's just have this motion, please.
Councillor Brown?
Bylaw to regulate the use of single-use checkout bags using the City of Victoria's bylaw as a model and prepare a consultation plan for council's review.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brown. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Contrary? Motion carried. Do you wish your vote recorded?
Sure.
Let me just say that I think this has been an extremely useful lesson for council, taking into account things we heard from Mr. Cuff the other day, and points out that sometimes when our good intentions are there, it behooves us to, perhaps prior to council, come to an agreement or understanding without a formal meeting, of course, but to some understanding of what wording actually reflects the views of everyone and articulates something that staff can work with, because we don't want to overburden them at this time when we're already engaged in so much other work. So thank you very much, everyone, for your work on that one. Let us move on now to Fire Station Number 1 replacement update. Chief Fry, welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. Well, hopefully I'll make this a bit easier for you, and all you have to do is accept this for information. I have a little thing here. So I just wanted to provide a real quick update on Fire Station Number 1. Again, it's all about being as transparent as we can through this process, and as this is a new council, most of you were not involved in the initial assessment of Fire Station Number 1. I believe Councillor Thorpe was the only one in council at that time. So Fire Station Number 1, this way. 1966 it was constructed. That was before Councillor Giesebrick was even born. 1966, and in 1998 we did a post-disaster upgrade to the facility. Fire Station Number 1 is also the emergency coordination center for the city. So in a time of a major disaster within the city, this is the building where the staff and outside agencies are going to respond to. It's also a regional fire dispatch center, providing dispatch services from the Malahat to Lanceville and Cowichan Valley to over 25 fire departments for fire dispatch. And it's located, I didn't put that on there, but on Fitzwilliam and Milton. The address is 666. During the background or the budget process for the 2016 budget, so this same time, 3 years ago now, or 2 years ago, 3 years ago now, there were several capital asset management projects in Fire Station, which included an antiquated boiler system. You'll see reports or pictures of that, new roof, new flooring, and they were continually in the projects every year to continue to update it. Council directed staff at that time to conduct an analysis and determine what the best cost for value was on the fire station. We went through a project in 2016 with HCMA Architecture, which facilitated a working group and combined a consultants' analysis and reports through engineers, and included also cost consultants. What they found was, on the outset, Fire Station Number 1 is currently at a 43% deficit to our seismic requirements of the new 2017 building code. 43%, not bad. It will stand up, we hope, in a major earthquake, but we won't be able to operate out of it. And again, it's our emergency coordination center and the hub to our fire. 43% of our fire responses are out of that fire station. There's no room for expansion of our systems. Our mechanical is at end of life and our electrical is at end of life. We cannot upgrade or put an air conditioner in the building. There is no capacity left within it for our staff. The consultants came back and said to council pretty loud and clear that status quo was not an option. Not recommended one bit. It was too high of a risk. So we talked a little bit about co-locations and what that looked like. We engaged with BC Ambulance early on, and at that point in time, they were on a 5-year window and could not commit to anything in that point in time. We had in our hands no completed assessments of other public safety facilities, specifically with the RCMP available to us. And really time is of essence, and we need to continue down with this. The location is the key. I think I have a slide here. As we can see, Nanaimo Fire Station number 1 is located pretty much in the epicenter of the downtown, where again, 42% of our calls for service are responded to with that number 1 fire station, and they're primarily in the downtown core. And again, with the good work that our planning department's doing, our downtown's going to get busier. And as we move up and have a more dense downtown, we will have more responses into that area, and higher risk buildings and high rises. Well, this doesn't look very good. Okay, so the consolidation, right now we have 2 buildings. We're running fire services downtown. We have the old library at 580 Fitzwilliam. Many of you are aware of that, and we are running Fire Station 1. The intent is to free up a building for city to use as its pleasure, and to combine and increase the footprint of the number 1 fire station, combine services again with prevention, fire administration, and ECC, emergency coordination, dispatch, and fire operations. So the report options that came through was status quo, not an option. Scenario 1 was to expand and renovate. Scenario 2 was to build new at the adjacent site, which would be the community services building, or build new at the existing site. The consultants walked council through the 3 different options, and you can kind of see what the risk of the system failure is and what the outlying cost over a 45-year life cycle was going to be, so whether it was out front or not. And the recommendation scenario was scenario 3, simply for the fact that we would still maintain 3 buildings at the end of the projects for council, which would also be the one at the corner of Prideaux and Fitzwilliam. It's currently being used by many community services groups. So at the new location, it'll free up, our CBC building, the old library at 580. That'll be free for council to do whatever they would like. And it has been recently seismically upgraded, that building itself. It's going to be, the intent right now is to a phased single move, phased construction, and consolidate it all. So this is an estimation from the original assessment. Now, these numbers are in the reports, but what I'd like to be clear is these are order of magnitude. The ultimate amount of money is 16.9, $17 million. And as the planning continues and we hire our architects and consultants, there's going to be movement between these line items. So our design, the design component is a bit less, but we know now we're 6 months delayed, and probably the cost of the build is going to be a bit more, but our cost consultant, our project manager, has committed to staying on budget. So a little quick timeline on what we've done. Council adopted the recommendation of scenario 3, build new at existing location at a total cost of $16.9 million. That was in May of 2017. We engaged and hired Deloitte after the Deloitte project recommendations from council, and they provided a proper project management outline. So it's one thing that we're doing that we haven't done previously, is we're following a strict project outline or project management plan. In February 19th of 2018, gosh, it feels so long ago, council directed staff to proceed with an alternate approval process, which would borrow up to $17 million for the reconstruction of Fire Station 1. At the May 14th council meeting, with the Fire Station 1 borrowing bylaw, the elector approval in accordance with the section was obtained, which means that the community and the electorate approved the borrowing, and we have borrowed already. We have funds in hand this morning. You probably saw that through our Finance Committee, approximately $3 million this year. And on October, just last month, we've hired an owner's representative to be its CAPEX, and they are providing project management oversight or owner's representative to assist our city with a retirement recently of the position as well. And as of in August, we also issued an RFP for the replacement architect, so an architect, and we're prepared to award that tomorrow. We're at a preparation to award that with our submissions. Where does council fit in? Again, we're going to continue to advise council. I believe we have either monthly or bi-monthly updates for council or any key decision points where council needs to be involved in decision making. We'll also be committing and communicating with our neighbors and our other key stakeholders in our community. And this is the project charter. Mr. Rudolph is our project sponsor, which is excellent. And that is it. And hoping that council receives this for information, and I'm here if you have any questions on the report as follows.
Thank you, Chief Fry. Any questions for the chief? Councillor Turley.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to Chief Fry. So I think I read somewhere that the #1 fire station would remain open during the construction period. Is that the case?
Through your worship, to Councillor Turley. That is correct. We will not be shutting down operations. Right now, the intent is that we will be running out of a temporary facility, but again, our consultant will be looking at the best option with the new architects to see if it's going to be the exact footprint, if we will be running out of that building or potentially the one at 580 Fitzwilliam.
Thank you.
Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you too, Captain Fry. You mentioned earlier in the report there that the ambulance center was basically, I think, in a lease position and weren't able to do anything, and that you had no other organizations that possibly might team up with you, such as the police. Has that changed since then? It's been a few years since. They're probably shorter on their lease now, and I do know that the RCMP is looking to have another building soon.
At this point in time, we have had no further recommendations. Council adopted the plan as it was back a year and a half ago now, so we have not engaged with that. But again, as we continue to build and recognizing that there will be potential future opportunities, we will keep that in mind during the design phase. That there could be room for potential expansion to the building that is built as potential opportunities, but recognizing also that it is a limited space and footprint of that lot.
Thank you, Councillor Bonner. Any further?
One more.
Move to receive for information.
Thank you very much. Councillor Thorpe, seconded. Councillor Armstrong. Any discussion? All those in favor? Contrary?
Thank you.
Motion carried. Thank you very much. And now, at long last, the very patient delegation from the Port Theatre. This is matters to be introduced by Mr. Lindsay, I understand. I think Mr. Lindsay's patriotism for one of Canada's favorite desserts has been the subject of some criticism here tonight, which I think is unwarranted for a public servant of such we hold in such high esteem. Please.
Thank you, Worship. I'm going to immediately pass it over to Ms. Lisa Bhopal Singh, who is the manager of our Community and Cultural Planning section, to give you a brief introduction to the report.
Please proceed. Thank you.
Council, through your worship. Hear me? Okay. The report you have before you is to provide you with an update on the status of the Port Theatre Community Performing Arts Centre. A key trigger for this report before you is that in the fall of 2018, we received news that there was a new funding stream through the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program for a community culture recreation stream. This funding provides up to 73% of eligible project costs, with about 40% from the federal government and 33% from BC, and this is for local governments. Eligible projects must result in improved access to or increased quality of cultural, recreational, or community spaces, with a focus on projects that are shovel-ready and that can be completed within 5 to 6 years following approval. There's only one application allowed per local government intake, and the Port Theatre Community Performing Arts Centre will be one of the projects Council will be asked to consider at upcoming meetings. So we're taking this opportunity to provide you with some background ahead of time. So on December the 4th, at the Finance and Audit Committee, staff will present further details on the funding program and the potential projects, which will include the Port Theatre. And on December 17th, Council will be asked to receive a report and consider which of the projects, if any, they may wish to support and pursue through this funding program. So the proposed project involves a building attached to the Port Theatre, and some of you may have already seen the plans for this. It's approximately 15,000 square feet on 3 levels, includes a flexible seat studio that ranges in capacity from 50 to 240 seats, and 2 rehearsal spaces. And in your report, you'll see a few more details about that. But essentially, it's a versatile, multifunctional performance studio and rehearsal space. This is something that has been identified as a community need dating back to when the Port Theatre was first constructed, but was left out due to budgetary constraints. The culture sector has also recently, in 2017, expressed need for a facility like this through a cultural gathering hosted by the Community Vitality Committee. And support for the project is identified in the official community plan, the 2014 cultural plan, and the 2016 to 2019 strategic plan update. So basically, the estimated costs of the project in 2016, April, was $13.2 million, and we're currently working with the Port Theatre to provide an updated figure based on current market conditions, and that will be coming to you in one of the following finance meetings. On September 8th, 2018, Council passed a motion to partner with the Port Theatre Society to move the project forward. This included a $4.6 million commitment, which was conditional on the Society basically securing the remaining $8.6 million funding at the time. This also included a $2 million line of credit secured by the city for the Port Theatre Society to use for the project. So on April 2016, Council reconfirmed the city's commitment to the $4.6 million and also the secured line of credit, and also included a commitment to explore funding opportunities together. So that's essentially what this information report is to provide you, and we have a delegation from the Port Theatre, Bruce Halliday, representing the Port Theatre, and he can provide you with more information, and also I'm also here to answer any other questions. So we hope you receive this report for information.
Thank you. I was just going to say, unless we have an overwhelming need to have questions first, I thought we might hear from Mr. Halliday on behalf of the Port first, and then proceed to questions. Mr. Halliday, welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. Sensitive to the fact that I have 5 minutes. I do have some handout if that can be given to council after. So Mayor and Council, thank you very much. My name is Bruce Halliday. I'm the General Manager at the Port Theatre. On behalf of the Port Theatre Board of Directors, who we have a number of this evening, Diana Johnson is Chair, Brian Clements, Colin Sheen, Evelyn O'Rourke, and Debbie Truman are all in attendance. Also, and of course, on behalf of our staff, our 180 volunteers, and the thousands of Nanaimo youth who are introduced to the arts each year through the Port Theatre. I thank you for this opportunity to address Council, and I look forward to answering any questions you have around the completion of Nanaimo's Performing Arts Centre. We are very excited at this opportunity to work in partnership with the City of Nanaimo to accomplish this long-needed and long-planned community project. While this project was part of the original plan of the Port Theatre, we have adapted and scaled the scope to reflect the needs and expectations of our fast-growing and maturing community. We're excited at the possibility of attracting millions of dollars in provincial and federal funding to create short-term and long-term jobs. Of course, an immediate influx of construction jobs and many ongoing full-time and part-time jobs in our creative sector. We are committed to work with the city in adding to the vibrancy of our downtown core, which in many ways began 20 years ago with the opening of the Port Theatre. In particular, we're looking forward to animating the Diana Krall Plaza, which has been identified by Mr. Hankins and one of the other delegations this evening, with the lobby access directly off that plaza. We are committed to the artistic, cultural, and economic growth for Nanaimo and the regional district, today and for decades to come. The Port Theatre with the new studio complex will be a very attractive addition for new residents and new businesses looking for a community that can offer the very best in lifestyle. Affordable housing, easily accessible outdoor activities, amazing parks and trails, as well as a complete suite of entertainment opportunities. Now, indeed, these are all very real and tangible examples of positive gains for Nanaimo, and all are within our grasp. Yet, at the core of this project are the intangible and more intrinsic benefits. This project will become a center of creation for local emerging artists, affordable, accessible rehearsal and performance facilities that will allow the development of emerging artists, as well as being a fully professional venue for established artists, an alternative venue for those whose work requires somewhere more intimate, cost-effective, a place for us to grow and spread our wings. Completing our Performing Arts Centre will place Nanaimo absolutely uniquely on Vancouver Island and in British Columbia, supplying the variety of offerings that attract creative minds and new businesses to this region. There's been a significant community consultation with artists and the public alike to ensure the broadest input and success. This project has been identified as a priority within the existing cultural community plan and has far-reaching support within the community. We have the design and engineering in place to be as shovel-ready as is possible. The Port Theatre appreciates the support shown by the City of Nanaimo to date, and we ask that you support this discussion around being a joint application to the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Fund. We are eligible to apply for the maximum funds within that program. We have a proven track record of raising infrastructure funds, having the Port Theatre being built on exactly that, $8.6 million in the past. And we have proven ourselves as good stewards of the City of Nanaimo-owned Port Theatre to date. We are ready to make Nanaimo a cultural destination. We are ready to move positively and creatively ahead. Thank you very much. I'm here for your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Halliday. Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you, I just want to express my gratitude to Mr. Halliday and to the board members here tonight for all the work you do in the community. I do have a question to staff. We have the ability to apply for up to 73 and a bit % of the capital costs here, and given that we've already indicated that we would include a commitment of $4.6 million, if we received this and that total amount, my understanding is that we would have the full funds for this project to move forward. Is that correct?
Sorry, I just started to talk.
I can try to answer that if you'd like.
Thank you. Anyone?
Perhaps I'll let Mr. Halliday go first and
Okay,
staff
thank you.
cover.
Thank you.
Yeah, so our current costing to date, which the most recent costing has been done in June 2018, so within 6 months, is just north of 15 million. We are now working directly with Mr. Strain, who is the city's new project manager, been assigned to this, and our architects and our design team to develop the cost escalations and contingencies that would be appropriate to bring you a final number. But to answer the question, we believe that this is, in fact, the most elegant of answers, and we're very hopeful that it will prove that if we get the 73.3% available to us, and the Port Theatre takes on its fundraising campaign of $2 million, which we think is well within our means, that all the funds will be in place. And that will be enough, but we need to confirm that exact number working with staff now.
Yeah,
Please.
Councillor Herman, through the Mayor, Your Worship. We will have more details on that. Finance will be presenting that to you on December 4th, and so there'll be a detailed outline of what the cost implications are and where we stand with the 4.6. So currently, as Mr. Halliday noted, we are working on those figures, and to get them, they'll be ready for you by the 4th.
Great. And may I, with a follow-up? This is open broadly, but we're clearly focusing on the Port Theatre. On December 4th, will you share with us some other programs that would also be eligible?
So Finance will be bringing forward a report that will contain 2 other projects as well as this one for consideration, and you'll be given all the details on that. This one is perhaps the more complex of the projects, and so we felt it was important that you get a bit more of the background and the history of Council's previous relationship to the Port Theatre and the project. So
thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to our delegation, I want to thank you for your presentation, and I wholeheartedly believe that this rehearsal hall and venue will definitely help the community and with the cultural vitality that we're looking for downtown. So I thank you for that. My question, probably not to you, sir, it might be to staff, is the lobby of this facility will be coming out on the Diana Krall Plaza. Now, I know that Councillor Brown likes to play board games there, but is the idea that we'll be having a redo of that plaza at the same time that this thing's going down? Like, I would like to see if we're going to be tearing the plaza up, maybe we should be looking at the same time of developing it and possibly so that we can do both of them at the same time, save ourselves a bit of money.
Thank you, Councillor. If staff feels happy to comment on it, that would be fine. Mr. Lindsay.
Your Worship, there's nothing in your current draft capital budget for that work. However, that's not saying it couldn't be added or that it wouldn't have merit. I think the most important aspect of that project is that it would give another purpose for people to be in that plaza and to travel through that plaza to a destination. So to have something at the end of the plaza that's welcoming to the community and it's a destination as they make their way from our commercial core through to the theater in the evening, I think would be a significant benefit to that area.
Any further questions for either staff or the delegation? If not, Councillor Thorpe. Sorry.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't have a question, but I just wanted to add my appreciation for the update and the new information. It's very exciting news, Mr. Halliday. Thank you to the work that you've done and your board as well. And if there are no other questions of the delegation, I will move acceptance of the report.
Seconded, Councillor Brown. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Contrary? Thank you very much. And I do want to recognize your board chair as a Freeman of the City of Nanaimo, former Councillor Diana Johnson, whose presence is always welcome in this chamber.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. I gather we have no correspondence, and they're under other business.
Thank you, Worship. So there is an item under other business. If you would like to read out the rise and report from the November 19th in-camera council meeting, and then I believe that's next after that, we will deal with Councillor Armstrong's notice of motion.
And by way of report from the in-camera meeting of council on November 19th, at the in-camera council meeting held 2018, November 19th, council appointed Ms. Michelle Corfield as the city's representative to the Nanaimo Port Authority, effective immediately for a term ending 2021, June 30th. We now have question period. Do we have the list?
Your worship,
Sorry?
before we move on to question period, I believe Councillor Armstrong was considering a notice of motion.
Sorry.
Actually, after hearing from Mr. Lindsay where he stated that the variance would be coming forward, I believe, December 17th, I think I can wait till then because I'll just vote my decision then. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. And for question period relating to agenda items for tonight. Thank you very much. Bartholomew, Bears. I think that might be a funny one. Am I mispronouncing? No. Thank you. I don't see anyone named Bartholomew, and the agenda item being Bears, so we're having a bit of fun tonight. That's good. We like to have happy council meetings. Ms. Truman, single bags, single-use checkout bags. Nice to see the former manager of our museum out.
I just have a clarification question. Is it council's understanding that on the single bag motion that staff is going to prepare a draft motion to limit the use of all single-use checkout bags? So any bag that we get now to retailer, we won't get? Paper and plastic? Okay, I just wanted to clarify that.
Councillor Gessel.
That's a big deal.
I'd just like to clarify a little bit that it's quite a complex question, and it's a lot more clarity. If you read through the Victoria bylaw regulating single-use checkout bags, the primary focus is banning plastic checkout bags.
The grocery, yeah.
Now, inclusive of the primary goal is to actually limit unnecessary wasting of resources. And so part of when we say regulate is mandating that there's a 12-cent, this is for the Victoria specific bylaw, 12-cent additional charge. If you want a paper bag, just everybody's got to pay 12 cents or whatever the community decides to do, and that's part of the process.
So not getting rid of them altogether?
No, I mean,
Gotcha.
we're
That's
practical and reasonable. The final goal is to help enable society not waste things unnecessarily, and that's the intent. So thank you for your question.
Thank you, Ms. Truman. Mr. Manners, on items 7A and 7C, the single-use bags and the Port Theatre.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Bill Manners from Nanaimo. I have two questions regarding the plastic bags. Number one, the consultation, is that to be from the public and retail merchants prior to the presentation of the draft bylaw or after the next steps are being approved by council?
Ms. Gorey?
Thank you, Worship. I'll take my best.
Just a moment. Just a moment. Let me plug myself in here again. There you go.
Are you ready?
Yes.
So through you to the delegation, Your Worship, I believe the intention of council was for staff to come up with a process, a consultation process, and develop that and bring it back to council and or at least for their approval. So it will definitely be with the public. It will be with the businesses and retailers as well as the community that has a say in this matter. And so we'll be looking to staff to develop what that consultation process looks like and probably mirror what the City of Victoria did.
Thank you.
Mr. Manners, please.
Thank you. The second question is, we heard 40 microns. Is it 40 mils or is it going to be 40 gauge? Just to give you an example, most banning of single-use plastic bags is 12.5 microns. And it's important that we get the number right, because if we go with 40, then the bags that Councillor Bonner was referring to, the big thicker bags that he gets, those would be included in 40 microns. So is it 40 microns or is it 12.5 microns? Do you know what the size of the bag would be?
Councillor Brown.
Through the chair to the delegation, I believe that's where we would be relying on the expertise and research of staff.
Thank you. That answers that question. Now we'll go to the next one, which was the theater. The $4.6 million commitment by the city of Nanaimo, is that limited to 4.6 period based on a $2 million fundraising by the Port Theatre, or is it more than that, those figures?
Thank you, Mr. Manners. Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you, Your Worship, to the delegation. So I think what's important to understand is that those numbers that were talked about this evening in the report are the last numbers that were updated and presented to Council. So one of the key steps that's going to happen between now and when we come forward to Council at the Finance and Audit Committee meeting on December, I think it's December the 4th, we'll be looking at those numbers to make sure that they're up to date, and then giving Council at that time an update on what the implications would be for their capital plan. So there's further work to be done on that before we can fully answer that question.
So just to further on that, if it is going to be more than $4.6 million, it would require the approval of this council?
Sorry, Your Worship, I think in general, the approval of the project, including even the application for the funding, is going to be subject to approval of this council. So the answer to that is yes.
Thank you very much and good night.
Thank you, Mr. Manners. Mr. Barclay, on items 7B and 7C.
Yes, Your Worship. I'm happy to see the construction of a new fire hall. I feel a little unease, though. It was built the same year I was born, and tearing things down that are created at age.
You have no idea how Councillor Turley and I feel.
My concern, however, is with the $3.2 million for planning and design. That seems high, and I wonder if that has been fully costed out for the fire hall.
Chief Fry, please.
Through your worship to the delegation. Again, those are initial costs through the Advocates Cost Consultants who have done several projects similar to that. But again, as the planning phase continues on, those will be amended as to what the real costs are. So everything will be recalculated up to and including the $17 million. For example, the architect design fee is sitting at $2 million, and we're expecting it to come in lower. But we do expect probably some of the construction costs at that time to be higher.
Yeah, I do remember in previous discussions some very large numbers bandied about for artwork with the fire hall, and that was a concern at that point. Also, kind of further to this, so the total is $17 million. That's been granted approval by the community, and that includes a $2.3 million contingency. Now, in Sydney, with their fire hall, I think they did lowball it, but it jumped by 40%. What would happen if, with additional costs coming in, the number jumps above $17 million?
So, through your worship, to the delegation, if the costs come in higher, we've only been granted up to $17 million through the electorate to borrow and build this, so we would have to go back through to council and advise them at that point in time. But again, it is not our expectation that we are going to go over. We're going to be as frugal and considerate to the taxpayers' pocketbooks as we can.
Okay, I like that word, frugal. Thank you. All right, and then with regards to item 7C, and it is related, I would again be concerned with the costs of consultants, planning and design for the Port Theatre, the Community Performing Arts Centre, what the cost of that would be. But more my concern is once that addition is completed, would there be operating costs that the city would have to take on? And I guess my First question related to that is, what does the city currently contribute to the operation costs of the Port Theatre annually?
Mr. Lindsay.
545,000.
So about $500,000?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So would the city consider increasing that to support the second, the addition to the Port Theatre?
Your Worship, I think it's just too premature in this project to give an indication of what the possible impacts would be for operations. I think that's something that would need to be determined.
Mr. Barclay, I think that's a fair comment by Mr. Lindsay. It will be up to council at the time.
Sure. Okay,
Make
I'm
a
just
decision
throwing
on
it out
those
there.
facts.
Yeah, and I'll come on December
Appreciate
4th
your
to
warning.
listen to more details. All right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. No other questioners? Thank you very much. All those in favor? Carried? Well done.